So FATF is an intergovernmental body of over 200 member countries who've signed up. It's the Financial Action Task Force responsible for policy in relation to money laundering, terrorist financing and weapons of mass destruction. So FATF sets standards, and we are also a member of the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. There are 9 of these regional bodies that fall under the Financial Action Task Force. The Caribbean Financial Action Task Force has 25 members, and the Cayman Islands is one of them. We had a mutual evaluation report that was published in March 2019, and now we're responding to the various recommendations in that report. So we respond to those, and then there'll be a decision on whether or not we've made sufficient progress, and that's a decision taken by the Financial Action Task Force. Yes, so if you look at the 2 main areas in relation to money laundering and terrorist financing, you have the law enforcement side and the supervisory side. So taking first the law enforcement side, we have established a new bureau, the Cayman Islands Bureau of Financial Investigations. That sits within the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, but it is a separate unit dedicated to cross-border money laundering and terrorist financing. So for example, when suspicious activity reports are filed with the Financial Reporting Authority, any appropriate ones for possible criminal investigation will be sent to this bureau, and they also look at matters such as open source material, incoming international requests. So we now have this dedicated bureau with extremely experienced investigators and also people with an accounting background, because you can imagine these are complex financial cases. So that's one large achievement in the area of law enforcement. In the area of supervision, we have now a supervisor for lawyers, and that is the CARA, the Cayman Regulatory Authority for Attorneys. So that's a huge achievement within itself. And we've made sure then that the different sectors that are required to be supervised are supervised. In relation to targeted financial sanctions, which is another area that the Financial Action Task Force monitors, we've made sure that when there's a notification, and these notifications originally come from the United Nations, that notification, by the time it comes to the Cayman Islands, we have made sure that that will go out, and it'll go out within hours as is required from when it's first made. And it will go to either anyone who's signed up on the Financial Reporting Authority website, or for example, in the case of SEMA, it will go to all of their regulated entities. So we've ensured that everyone has that message and knows what the current situation is. In relation to coordination and cooperation and making sure that's working at its full and most efficient capacity, we've set up a number of committees. So for example, for law enforcement, we have the Financial Crime Focus Group. That's chaired by the Director of Public Prosecutions and consists of all relevant agencies. So you have the Financial Reporting Authority, who receives the suspicious activity reports. You have Customs and Border Control. You have the Anti-Corruption Commission. And of course, you have the Bureau under the police. So we've made sure that they all sit together in the Financial Crime Focus Group that meets monthly to ensure that financial intelligence is being harvested and progressed, and working on various different initiatives to ensure that that cooperation is in place and they're working at their full and best capacity. In relation to the supervisors, we now have 2 self-regulatory bodies. We have CARA for the lawyers and SEPA for the accountants. We also have SEMA, our biggest regulator, and we also have DCI, who supervises dealers in precious metal metals and stones, real estate agents and property developers. Then for our non-profit organisations, we have the Registrar of Companies who have the function of the Registrar of Not-for-Profit organisations. So all these different supervisors meet in a supervisory forum chaired by CIMA to ensure that all their different pieces are coming together, they're discussing areas of mutual interest and that it's streamlined in that manner so there's no silos or gaps in what we're doing. The other committee that we've established relates to proliferation financing, so funding weapons of mass destruction and making sure that there can be no misuse of the Cayman Islands as a financial centre in terms of any financing that might be going on. So the Proliferation Financing Interagency Group has been established and it's chaired by our Sanctions coordinator, and they do work on looking at the possible threat and providing outreach and training and ensuring that those people who need to be aware are aware of that. Risk is a really important factor, and it's something that the Financial Action Task Force looks at and that we as a jurisdiction also benefit from, because by knowing our risk we can then put measures in place to target any high risk areas and to ensure we mitigate it. So in matters such as terrorist financing, we need to assess our risk, which we've done. In matters such as the Cayman Islands as an international financial centre, what risk may there be there? So we've carried out these risk assessments and then made sure that the financial services industry is aware of them by matters such as circulation, outreach that we've done to ensure that everyone's aware of the risk and knows how best to mitigate it. In relation to terrorist financing, there's three areas to look at. So the use of the funds, the collection of the funds, and the movement of the funds. So in terms of use of funds and collection of funds, clearly the Cayman Islands is low risk, and fortunately we don't have that risk. But the area to be aware of is possible movement of funds. So as an international financial centre and as with other international financial centre, we need to all be aware of what this means and how we may prevent or detect it if it did in fact occur.